Nikki Curry, and I am a publicity and media brand strategist located here in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. And I have the esteemed pleasure to be your virtual meeting producer tonight. So what that means is I'm going to introduce our moderator and facilitator, and then I'm going to go off camera, more than likely, and then I'm going to monitor the Q&A section of this call. This particular call is called the workplace, women in the workplace, respecting the workplace. And I think we're going to change that up a little bit so we can have some fun with this and engaging in some dialogue. So before I introduce our moderator and facilitator tonight, I would like to give a few housekeeping rules. We should be in presentation mode only, so all of our attendees should be muted until we are going into the Q&A section of our meeting. I would like to ask all of the panelists to please mute your phones and your devices. If you have feedback or if there's noise in your background noise, please mute your phones until you are called upon to speak. So, without further ado, please allow me to introduce my friend, my media sister, my colleague, and your moderator for tonight, Ms. Alveda Ewell. Alveda Ewell is a retired journalist. I can't believe I'm saying that, but yes, she's a retired journalist. She has 40 plus years in the media industry. Currently, she serves as the vice president of HD Reps, which is as a media agent. And this particular company is located out of Dallas, Texas, even though she is in the Hampton Roads area. She's also my vice president of the Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals Incorporated, which is an affiliate of the National Association of Black Journalists. So please allow me to introduce to some and present to others my friend, Alveda Ewell.
Hey, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Thank you so much, Nikki. I'll tell you something. It's hard for me to look when I heard you say retired or former or whatever. I teared up because I don't. As a journalist, I don't know whether you ever retire from it. I think when you do whatever you do, it's hard to ever let it go, and so. This is going to be a really good conversation tonight, and we're talking about, are women respected in the workplace? And that question, like Nikki said, I want it to be organic. I want people out there to be able to ask questions after we talk to our panelists and get to know everybody that's here tonight, and then just kind of have fun with the whole thing. Let me introduce the panelists to you. Tonight. Gwen Hurt is the CEO and founder of Shoe Crazy Wine out of Richmond, Virginia. If you've never had Shoe Crazy Wine, trust me, you'll be crazy for it once you've had it. Trust me, it is really good wine. So you got to check her out. And Gwen, you just had a birthday too. I know she's muted right now, but Gwen just had a birthday yesterday. And I know you didn't want me to tell anybody, but you know what? You can't talk right now anyway. So happy birthday, Gwen. Diane Miller is retired from corporate sales in Chicago. Diane, we already know, I can't wait to hear some of your stories because I can only imagine being in corporate sales. You've got some real stories to tell. So I'm waiting to hear this. Yeah, I saw your eyes. I know that there's some amazing stories to tell. Synethia White is the program manager for the City of Hampton Office of Youth and Young Adult Opportunities. Hi, Synethia, how are you? Good to see you. And Lisa Godley, my colleague as well. You are an Emmy award-winning television producer and host at WHRO here in Norfolk, Virginia. Lisa Godley, Lisa is also the president of Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals as well. So we served together. We were actually the legacy from Nikki. And so, we are really excited to be doing this tonight. We know that, first of all, things are probably going to change a lot now that after COVID-19. But let's get into who you are. Let the audience know who you are and, how you even got to come on this panel. Gwen, give us an idea of we know you didn't just start with Shoe Crazy Wine just right away. You unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep. We can.
Okay, yes. No, I did not. I actually was in IT. I worked for a Fortune 300 company, IBM, and then went on to work for Lenovo and took an international assignment. So I know I was not always in wine, but I love it. It's like my dream career, if you will. And although it didn't start the way I had initially had it in my head, that I would retire and buy a vineyard and coddle grapes and run through the vineyards, it didn't happen that way. I had to do it a lot sooner and do it a lot smarter and a lot different.
Okay. Diane, corporate America, corporate sales, what was that like, and how did you get there?
Well, I actually started my career in building design. I had a design degree, and so I did that for a lot of years. And then because I wanted to make more money, I transitioned into sales. And it's funny because the first part of my career, I traveled quite a bit. And because it was construction related, I traveled a lot with men. And back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of my church lady friends had issues with that. So it's been an interesting journey. I still do some consulting now because, as you say, I don't think you ever fully retire.
No, not at all. We want to get into some of that in a little bit for sure. Sanithia, you work for the City of Hampton Youth and Youth Adult Opportunities, and I can imagine that is not the easiest job in the world. So how did you actually get started? You look like you're 15. So you can...
I'm going to graciously accept that 15 and run with it. So thank you very much. So I initially got started when I went to college. I wanted to be a history teacher. And during my observations, I witnessed a student who had wreaked havoc in the classroom and turned the teacher's world upside down. And I saw the teacher on the losing end of the stick, and I saw the administrator, kind of letting the teacher suffer at the hands of the parent and the student. And so after that, I started researching things that I could do to help young people before they get to that point, and families before they get to that point, and ended up working in direct service to young people in juvenile services, as the activities coordinator, and then ultimately being responsible for youth violence prevention in the City of Hampton. So saw the importance of prevention.
Yeah, you created your own niche, to say the least. Lisa, I've known you for quite a length of time, many years when you were, I believe it was WTKR, before you got to WHRO. Give us a kind of a synopsis of your career.
Wow. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do and always desired to do. Always had a passion for journalism. In high school, I knew I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. Had a high school teacher, a soror of yours, actually say, what about television instead of newspaper? And that planted the seed. Ended up at Norfolk State, studied broadcasting, went up to Northwestern, studied newspaper at Norfolk State, studied broadcasting at Northwestern, and then several television stations around the country, and came back home. This is my home, and worked at TKR for quite a while, and then transferred over to WHRO. But the thing about transferring from day-to-day reporting and anchoring to what I'm doing now is I always wanted more time with the pieces that I put together, the storytelling. I always wanted more time to tell those stories. And now that I'm at HRO, I can have 5 minutes. I can do a 30-minute documentary. I can do an hour-long documentary, and I just love what I do.
In public TV, you get your right to expand your horizons and be who you really are. I love, local TV or even national TV, but you're kind of limited a lot of times in your scope, So, really happy that you're doing exactly what you really want to do. But we didn't all start right here where we are and what we wanted to do. And listening to all of the stories, what I'm actually hearing is your careers came out of, they were born out of necessity. Gwen, give me an idea of what that meant to you.
Okay, so for me, I'll go back even a little bit further. I won't age myself too much, but I'll go back. I actually got married very young, had my children very young, and took the course of the career of homemaker. So I was a homemaker for quite a few years. And then as the children got older, I wanted to do something else. I felt I have a brain, I'm smart, I can do what, other women are doing in the workplace. And I had girlfriends who were working in corporate, and I just so admired what they were doing. And I wanted that too. Well, my husband at the time didn't agree with that. He said, you bake cookies and you take the kids to soccer and, those types of things. And everything was demeaning and somewhat demoralizing. So I didn't get the support of someone who I had supported all those years. I was always his cheerleader. God forbid something happened at work, it wasn't your fault. You are this and you're so smart and you're so talented. And then when you need that yourself, sometimes you don't get it. And I was not getting that. So I decided I'm going to do this anyway. And so I typed up a resume on a typewriter, if you can believe, in the late 90s. And because I didn't know how to use a computer. And I actually typed up a resume, and on my resume, it said skills born from homemaking. So I was very clear that everything I had put on my resume was what I had learned from the age of 17. I was young when I got married, and those were the skills that I was very good at. And management was one of them, because as mothers, don't we manage everything?
Everything.
And so I got the opportunity to come down to Raleigh, North Carolina, and interview with IBM for an entry-level position. One, they were shocked someone was using a typewriter. And two, they wanted to know who had the guts to turn a homemaker's career into a resume, right? And so they interviewed me, and I went in, and they said, I need you to transcribe all these papers, and I went, we Houston, we have a problem, because I didn't know how to use a computer. And so I said to the hiring manager, I said, what's more important? Is it accuracy or speed? And he said, well, accuracy, because we're going to be creating invoices for Fortune, 500 companies, and they need to be accurate. And I thought, hell, I can nail accurate, right? And so I came out of that room with one line typed on the paper. And the lady that gave it to me, the young lady that gave me the stack, she says, no, you were supposed to transcribe all of them. I said, I asked you what was more important, accuracy or speed? And he said, accuracy. That's 100% accurate, I guarantee you. And that was how I got hired at IBM. So I was in entry level, and I took that opportunity. I had my foot in the door to grow my career. And I was fortunate enough that I did have, a mentor early on in there. And so that was my entryway into corporate America and building a career outside of the career I had at home. So that was the start point. And then I went on to work for that company for quite some time, and then did also get laid off, because, anybody that's worked in corporate knows, and especially in IT, every 2-3 years, they're restructuring, they're upstructuring, downstructuring, and you're literally looking for a job after that. And that happened again. And so I was downsized, but the difference was I was in a car accident 2 days after that, and I had a year of physical therapy. And I just said, okay, it's either, these walls closing in on me, or I need to do something. And so I launched Shoe Crazy Wine while I was in physical therapy with the help of my daughter. So that's kind of the net version of the journey to Shoe Crazy Wine.
Wow. I'm going to ask you too in a few minutes where you came up with the name, but Diane, you started out telling us that I believe you were telling us that your career started out with working with mostly men.
Mm-hmm.
Were you one of the few women in your industry or working? Tell us what that was like. Maybe some of the perils, pitfalls, and possibilities that you dealt with.
Well, I am a woman of the 70s, and I wanted to roar. And I also wanted some RESPECT. So I was the first one in my world, my family, to really graduate from college. And my mom was very strong, intelligent woman who always wanted to go to college, but because she grew up in poverty, she never had the opportunity to do that. So she really nurtured a drive in me. And my first job was actually in corporate America, a national insurance company in building design and construction. So I traveled with men all the time, all over the country. And I got quite good at talking with men, you know, to get what you needed to get done.
Yeah.
And to complete a job. So that was a great skill set, but it was hard. And it was also the 70s and 80s. And there was a lot of explicit and unexplicit sexual harassment because that was normal back in the 70s.
Yes, it was.
It has only recently culturally changed. So yeah, that was my base, my first entry into corporate and work world as a professional. And yeah, it was very patriarchal. It was a good old boy company, you know, still kind of is.
Interestingly enough, I think that a lot of us can say that we worked for good old boy companies, and, you know, if you will. I mean, we don't have to mention which ones, but in all honesty, that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation tonight. Are women respected in the workplace? And, you know, too often, I don't even know that they realize that it's not respect, if you will, if that makes any sense. Sunithia, you know, give us some of your aspect on that.
Well, I think speaking specifically from my background in working in violence prevention, the majority, unfortunately, statistically, of those who get in trouble are men. And so I think the expectation is that those who are working most to change that curve or that dynamic should also be men. And so I think that creates somewhat of an implicit bias for many who come into this work. And you probably have to work a little bit harder to show that you not only know what you're doing, but you care about what you're doing. And so the example I often use is, while I am not, I'm not a survivor of any form of cancer, it does not mean that I cannot have some understanding for what a person who has dealt with cancer or their family or friends have had to deal with in that fight. I also think that there are, you know, I'm thankful that I look younger than I am, but I think that also creates another barrier as well. I have a very good track record of relating to young people and being very understanding and willing to work hard with them and on their behalf. And because of that, I think sometimes folks will say, well, one, she's a woman, and two, she knows what she's talking about because she's a baby. I am not a baby. I am an almost 40-year-old baby, if that helps.
You know, we go through that a lot of times, and I know my daughter is in her late 20s, early 30s, and she's done really well already with her second master's, and a lot of people think she's 16. And so the respect level a lot of times is very different until they know who they're dealing with and how. So Lisa, you and I were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that in the world of broadcasting, we've gone through some stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It could not have been an easy road for you. And we both did it in the 70s, early 80s, when racial discrimination was, it was strong then. It was very strong then.
Oh, absolutely. I remember certain stories that I would just simply not be assigned, or I would be assigned because of my gender and because of my race all the time.
Yep.
we almost had a joke going at one point in one of my newsrooms because it was sort of like, oh, there's a chemical spill at this. Okay, we're sending Lisa and Ricardo, and there would be this. It was like, well, we all look alike, and why are we the ones going out to cover the chemical spill? Or there's this a shooting in this particular. Okay, Lisa, and it was just like, what? Why is it always us that you're sitting in situations? But that was how it was. And if you wanted to keep this job, you would do what they asked you to do. And there were plenty of times that I thought, this is just so unfair. I cannot believe they are constantly doing this and putting me in harm's way. And I remember being 7 months pregnant with my daughter, who is now 21. I remember being 7 months pregnant, standing on a beach in a hurricane, getting sand in my eyes. I was up on a platform, sand was in my eyes, and I'm covering a hurricane. And there were 2 other women in our newsroom who were also pregnant, not as far along as I was, that got to stay inside. And they did not look like me.
Yeah, this may surprise some people. But I remember I was 5 months pregnant and being told, no, you are going up in the helicopter with the pilot, and you've got to fly over such and such. And I said, I shouldn't really be in a helicopter. And they said, no, you're going to do that. That's what you're going to do. And so it wasn't always. I remember that was with my first child, and before that, so you can imagine, where this is going. Before that, I was told I have to be on bed rest because they were really nervous. And they decide, all right, we've got to meet up with the executives on the weekend on a boat. And I said, I'm not allowed to go on the boat. I have to be on bed rest. And I was told, no, you're going on the boat. Wow. Went on the boat. And things didn't end so happily for me.
Oh, wow.
I had to end up, and nobody got in trouble for it. I took the loss, if you will. Wow. So there've been a lot of things that you go through, and like Lisa said, if you want to keep the job, it's what you do. A lot of people today will say, I'm not doing that. Until you're in the situation, you do not know what you will do. And it's not so much that, that we've just laid down and took it. And I'm talking to the young people out there who are listening to the conversation. It's not so much that we would just lay down and take it. It was trying to survive in a difficult world that sometimes you're trying to sink or swim and didn't even know how hard you were paddling under the water. You're just doing what you got to do.
There's something missing in our communities. You may ask yourself, how might I gain resources for myself and my church that we may develop in faith, work, and economic insight? The Made to Flourish Hampton Roads Network is the answer. We are a local citywide network that seeks to empower pastors and their churches to integrate faith, work, and economic wisdom for the flourishing of our communities. It's free, and we welcome pastors, clergy, and faith-based community leaders to join. As a special gift, you will receive free books and resources. So join today and sign up now at madetoflourish.org.
Nikki, do we have any questions yet? I could ask them a couple of other questions as well, but do we have any questions yet from the audience? I want to make sure that the audience gets in because we're halfway through, and I just want to make sure that you get your questions answered. So, okay.
I can't hear.
Okay.
We do not have any questions as of yet, so you can go into your second phase.
Okay.
Well, I would actually, if I could interject something there too, and I think what both you and Lisa didn't mention is that in all of the things that you had to do in your industry, you were the trailblazers for the younger women today that don't have to do that. And that's a very potent thing. I think if Diane and I talk about corporate, some of the things that we had to deal with is trailblazing for the younger people that or younger women that are in corporate today. And one of the things that I thought that came out of the Hollywood thing, the hashtag Me Too, the one thing they didn't touch on is the corporate version of that. I had to go through. The little remarks under their breath, and you just try to ignore them. I have a job to do. Or if you get a promotion, someone saying, well, the only reason you got it is because you're attractive, because you wear your skirts so high. I mean, it's things like that, in corporate that you deal with. And like you said, some people today would say, well, I would say so-and-so, or I wouldn't take it. Well, you know what? We were the trailblazers, so you can say something today. And I think that's a very powerful statement that both of you just made. We took it. I took the hurt. I took the loss so that you today don't have to take the hurt and take the loss. That's just, I just like to say, job well done, ladies, doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me say this because I know we've got a question. I definitely saw the question coming up. I want to say thank you to you for recognizing that. A lot of young people today don't realize what all of us on this panel have gone through in order to make it easier for where they are and where they're going. We took a lot of hits. We survived them, and the reason we survived them was to be able to come and tell you that you can do it too. So
exactly.
Yeah, so thank you, Gwen, for that. Nikki, we have a question from.
Yes, we actually have 2 questions in the queue. Our first question, moderator, is, are things getting any better in the workplace today? And this question was posed by Mr. Chuck Harrison.
Are things getting any better in the workplace today? I'm sure they're getting better in a lot of, we've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way as well. I would rather let one of the panelists to answer that. Diane, do you want to start there?
I'd love to. And I'd love to just kind of build on what Gwen said. I tell my daughter all the time, Gwen was a young mama. I'm an old mama. I had my baby after 40. I tell my daughter all the time, you have generational privilege. And everybody who's gone through the academic pipeline in this day and age, like, there is a certain amount of generational privilege you're given because culture has changed. However, there are always new things. It's the whole gender and race thing recreates and manifests in different ways.
Yeah, it does.
And so certain things have gotten better. Can we get to an even greater level of consciousness? Yes, we have to. I think that's the point. We're all striving for a deeper level of consciousness beyond the mind, beyond the body. How do we integrate, the 3 circles of life, mind, body, and heart, so they're all equally valued holistically in the workplace and in life in general.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Nithya, we were just, can you piggyback on what Diane was just saying?
So what I was thinking of when Diane mentioned generational pieces, I think that's something that's really important that we've embedded into our training opportunities with young people, is recognizing that bias and being able to be comfortable about having those conversations. But as it relates to the workforce specifically, when we work to train our young people during the summer employment program, we discuss the things that do not necessarily affect them directly, but they have all of the power to change. So we talk about respecting others in the workplace, and we talk about recognizing, what you may have been taught in home about how you feel about folks with disabilities or women or people who are of a different background. And I think that we have to continue to do that. We can't rest on our laurels. The work that was done by those before us was absolutely necessary, and I am very thankful. But it is now our job to work with the young people that we come into contact with to make sure that they don't move backwards. young men in the workplace need to respect women in the workplace, and young women in the workplace need to respect each other and themselves.
Yes.
I think that something that's been very, very helpful for me is having mentors in the workplace who are women, who encourage you to be comfortable speaking your truth and be comfortable being a leader. For me in particular, a woman by the name of Shalay Blackwell, when I entered the workforce, she took me under her wing and has been very helpful and instrumental in my career and also in my personal life as a mother and as a family person. And so I mentioned her to say she hasn't stopped yet. So what she went through when she entered the workforce after college, it didn't stop her. And she has not stopped pushing the envelope to make the workplace better for other young women.
Yeah. Lisa, you and I were just talking a few minutes ago about, our industry and how prejudiced it has been and still can be in many, many instances. Talk about some of the things that, how far do you think we have come? And I that was the gentleman asked that question.
A long way. I think we've come a very long way. I remember talking about things like being, sexually harassed, assaulted in a newsroom. I remember that from the late 90s and thinking to myself, well, maybe it was what I was wearing, because everything hadn't evolved like it has now.
Yeah. You do question yourself, don't you, ladies?
Maybe that was my fault that he felt it was okay to rub himself against me, sort of thing. And now it would be, and if a younger person even came to me and said, and this has happened, that somebody said something inappropriate. Oh no, that's inappropriate. That's inappropriate. He shouldn't have said that to you. Make it clear that he should not have said that to you. You need to go to Human Resources. Want me to go with you? There's a different mindset. There's a different mentality now, and I hope and pray that young women feel empowered enough to speak up and not feel like, wow, if I say something, I'm really going to lose this job, or they're going to retaliate against me because of it. I'm glad to see things changing to the point that younger women and women really of all ages at this point in time feel empowered to say something when they feel like they're being disrespected and discriminated against.
Somebody else, Nikki, I don't even want to miss the questions because the questions are so good. I'm seeing them coming at the bottom of the screen. Nikki, somebody just literally asked an amazing question.
They are coming in.
Oh, yeah. Somebody just asked a question about.
Yes.
Can we hear you, Nikki?
Well, if we, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have several questions in the queue. So if you would like to go in order, we can, or we can address a particular question. It's up to you.
The next question will be just fine. Whatever the next question is.
Okay, let's go in order then. Okay, our next question is from Miss Renita Baldwin. She wants to know, do you feel the sacrifice you ladies have made, especially in the beginning of your career, set the tone for women in the 21st century to experience less sexual harassment? If so, why?
I saw the wow on Lisa's face. Go ahead, Lisa.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I'm believing with all my heart that it has. I really am. I do.
Gwen?
Yeah, I second that. I think, like I said, when it was, when the comments were made about myself, I didn't deal with it head on. And I think today, just as Lisa was saying, young women have the opportunity to deal with it head on. And honestly, as much, hype and negative and positive hype that hashtag Me Too got, it did bring it to the forefront for all of us. And it has allowed a new generation to have a voice. And I think that makes them more empowered in their workplace, no matter what that workplace is. Yeah.
Diane?
I was thinking really deep about this. I think so many things look different. I think within the workplace, it's definitely better. But I think for business women, especially young women, that the harassment has changed because you to follow the law and you want to keep your job, harassment's not allowed. So it happens more in the club or in the bars or in, areas after the work hours. So that's how I see it changing.
Interesting. Sanithia? You still muted?
Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
having trouble. Yes, I'm unmuted now. So just piggybacking off of what Diane said, I think that blurs the lines. I think in a lot of professional settings, the networking is seen as a component of your position. So if you're in sales or marketing or public relations and a variety of other areas, that outside of the work networking is there. And I think that some people let their guard down, not to be harassed, but I think that some people really do change the level of respect that they have for their peers outside of the typical office setting. And I think that is very, very dangerous. And I think that, again, in programs that are preparing young people for professional careers, that should definitely be a part of the discussion. This is a part of the position of the job requirement, but it does not give you the right in this setting, in this quote unquote informal setting, to be disrespectful to me.
Absolutely.
Or to anyone else.
And to recognize what disrespect actually is.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we don't. Nikki, we've got questions that are coming at us. I'm seeing that at the end.
Yes, they are. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Chuck Harrison and Vernita Baldwin for asking such great questions.
Yes.
So our next question is from Ms. Cheryl Jeffries. This is a great question. Can you all speak on if any of you have dealt with ageism on the job or a job they were pursuing? That's a good question.
Who wants to start?
I'll start. I didn't actually experience ageism. I think I had colleagues that actually were, for want of a better word, were let go. And they felt that it was because of their age. But I myself personally never dealt with it.
Diane?
Because I've chosen more not-for-profit work and consulting work, that hasn't been as big of an issue for me. But again, somewhat like Gwen, I do see it for others. Mm-hmm. I do, especially in more of a corporate setting.
Yeah.
So I guess, is she actually asking aging out of certain professions? I'm guessing that might be the question. Because a lot of times, that's what I'm thinking. That aging out of certain professions. One of the toughest things is when you get older. We are a lot stronger, a lot wiser. We understand a lot more, but they want the younger people. They want what they call the fresh meat. They want the young people in the workforce, one, because they don't have to pay them as much. And so it gives younger people the belief, I guess, in a way that we just don't know what we're talking about. We're just those old people who, you did it that way then. It's time to change the way we do things. If you don't learn from the older people like us, if you don't learn from us, where are you really going to get your experience? Where are you really going to learn? It's just the way I see it. I probably, that's fine.
I think that's where the dialogue comes in, right? Because we were all that person. I mean, I went into the workplace a little later. But we were all that person that, the person that had been there 25 years, said, oh, now you're going to come in and try to change everything. So I think, we've also been in the role of being that, person that came in and wanted and could see fresh and new ideas. And I think that's where the dialogue comes in between the I'd say the more seasoned employee and the new one. I think the dynamics that are difficult is when that employee that's older is now working for the younger one. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a push pull. But I think that's where you need to have dialogue. I think to Sunithia's point, when you're training people to go into the workforce, and that's at the university level, whatever it is, college level, community college level, it's training them to have that dialogue with that person that's been there for 25 years or 27 years or whatever. That's just how I see.
And, and to respect the older generation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there needs to be more discussion about, as Gwen said, integrating new ideas, but respecting institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
Because there are folks who have been doing something for a very long time, and they can teach you things you will never learn in a textbook.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes you have to really totally think on your feet. I get a lot of young people in my profession as a media agent to ask me, my gosh, how do I handle this? And how do I handle that? And what do I do here? And what do I do there? And so that's a lot of what I do, is to give older knowledge, strong knowledge to a lot of young people. And it's also empowering for us.
Yeah,
We've
it is.
gone through a lot. Yeah. Nikki?
Also,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I think this is a hot button question, because I also think, just from a cultural standpoint and worship of youth, I mean, it just, eldership has not been nurtured in the business world. Let's be real. It's like, you get the buyout, you're gone. So there's a lot of things that business world doesn't. I think this whole thing could be better than what it is if eldership was nurtured within the business world, and there was mutual, the reciprocity thing between the young and the old.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally agree.
There's something missing in our communities. You may ask yourself, how might I gain resources for myself and my church that we may develop in faith, work, and economic insight? The Made to Flourish Hampton Roads Network is the answer. We are a local citywide network that seeks to empower pastors and their churches to integrate faith, work, and economic wisdom for the flourishing of our communities. It's free, and we welcome pastors, clergy, and faith-based community leaders to join. As a special gift, you will receive free books and resources. So join today and sign up now at madetoflourish.org.
Another question?
Yes, great dialogue. Yes, we do. And this is a great question to segue into what you all were just talking about. Again, this is from Dr. Vernita Baldwin. She says, I was raised by a mother and grandmother in the Deep South in the 60s and 70s, and I am all the better academically and professionally. How can we continue to set positive examples to future women in broadcasting, the arts, in education, in entrepreneurship, so that we, women, don't return back to whence we've come?
Who wants to start?
I'll start. I was raised by a grandmother and a great-grandmother who, by way of lack of opportunity, were entrepreneurs, but they were not called that because they ran laundry business and cleaning services and things of that nature, and cooking. They had to do things that were available to them so that they could support their families. And so I think if we continue to have these conversations and push it further, then we can have discussion about new ways of becoming entrepreneurs or entering the career of your choice. And I think another thing, that comes from the encouragement of one another. When it was time for me to apply for financial aid, my grandma was clueless, but it was another woman who stepped in, who was younger, who had children who went to college, who was very helpful in that process. very helpful to her, did not make her feel, and in being helpful, she did not demean her because of what she didn't know. And so I think as we continue to do things to lift one another up and push each other to different career paths and following, what makes our heart content, we have to be supportive and non-judgmental of one another, regardless of the background of the person that you are engaging with, especially if it's another woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to kind of transition too into, because we also know, we've probably got about 15 minutes, and I want to continue to take the questions. I want to kind of shift into what COVID-19 is actually going to mean to the workplace, and the workplace, especially for women. How is this going to look? Now, we don't have any idea how it's absolutely going to look. We don't know what it's going to look like for anyone, but we know where we've been. And we know that it is going to look different, but we also know that we'll survive. And why do we know that? Because we've survived from probably tougher situations. I'm looking at, when I was doing some research for this, I was looking at it. It indicated that only 7%. I kind of think it's a larger percentage than that. Only 7% of the workplace of people working today are working from home at this point. I really think it's a lot higher than that. They said by 2021, it's going to be between 25 and 30% because of COVID-19. I kind of think that number is going to be even higher than 20 to 25%, because I think a lot of employers are going to realize or assume that they can do more with less. That they don't need as many people, and that they can do it from a satellite rather than than spending money for real estate and to being in a big building. I think corporate America is going to shift. Just my thought process. Anybody want to piggyback on that?
Well, I'll jump in because I was always a telecommute employee in corporate. Most of my career was telecommuting, and I've always been a proponent of it for a couple of reasons. One, if you are a mother that has children of school age, you have more flexibility. And I enjoyed being able to have a corporate career. I didn't miss out on promotions or anything because I worked from home. I found that I worked more hours because I worked from home. So they do get a little bit more out of you, but you also have the flexibility of your schedule and how you work. So if they extended that to 25% of the workforce, and a good portion of those were, working moms, I'd be like, yay, because I know how positive it can be on your children. You're there for them, right? And you're still building a career. And like Diane, I did travel as well when I worked from home. And so I did have to have, help, babysitters. But for the most part, I worked from my home office. And I am a great proponent of it. And I think it helps reduce costs for companies because they don't need that real estate. But I don't think it'll ever be a time when a company doesn't have to have a corporate headquarters and have to have, office space. They may not need as much. And for me, I think, if anything positive, you could say that coming out of COVID-19 is that for working moms, if they can work from home, that's a boon.
I agree with that. Lisa?
Just let me say for the record, I'm loving the fact that I'm not paying tolls. Every week, loving that part of it. And I agree with you. I think companies will reassess, and I think they'll start to realize that you don't have to be here 5 days a week. You can work from home 3 days, 2 days a week, and I think that'll make people actually happier. I am, I like that idea. If you talk about positive things that may have come from this incredibly awful
thing,
that is upon us right now, but I like that. I like the idea, and I don't know. My kids are, like I said, they're 21 and 23, so we can go to our separate areas, so we get a little frustrated about all being in the same place. But
social distance.
well, they are mommy, can you? So I don't know about, somebody else might need a break to go into the office at a point in time. But that part of it, I like the idea, and I'm hoping that they will reassess and at least give people the option to, work at home or come into the office. Because I think I think it has benefits. I really do.
Well, Lisa, I have to say you have like reduced my level of hope, because I have been fighting mommy for 27 minutes. And so mine are 11 and 6, and you just said 21 and 3. So this is only going to go downhill, you're saying?
It doesn't really get much easier. No, it doesn't.
When they get older, you can send them to their rooms.
Or in my case, to their own respective homes.
Their own respect, right?
Exactly. Go there. Nikki, what's our next question?
Yes, our next question is from Ms. Elise McLaughlin. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. She wants to know, how do you continue to build workplace confidence after going through sexual harassment and unfair workplace treatment?
Ladies?
How do you build workplace? How do you build workplace? What? How do you? I missed some of it. I'm sorry.
Let me read it again. Elise would like to know, how do you continue to build workplace confidence after going through sexual harassment and unfair workplace treatment, after being treated unfairly or enduring sexual harassment? How do you build your confidence? How did you build from that?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I'll just answer from my own personal point of view, if it happened to me, because it had on some level. Wasn't very overt, but I depended on other ladies that I worked with, other colleagues, that I worked with to. I don't want to say to kind of coalesce, if you will, right, and have somebody that you can talk to about it. At the time that things were happening to me and things were being said, I didn't go to HR, right, because you don't want to be pegged as that person, right, that complains and whatever. And so I always depended on my other colleagues, female colleagues, to kind of help. And that's probably what I would do in order to see, there's always strength in numbers, right? And it may not have happened to them, but they could at least understand and, kind of, help you through it. That's a tough question, though. That's a really good question.
The first thing that came to mind to me is, don't be afraid to talk to somebody. And that's what employee assistance programs are for, too.
Sure.
I'm talking about, you can, you should talk to somebody possibly who's already gone through it in the workplace.
Yeah.
Being careful, because then there's always that delicate balance there of somebody trying to rise above you and telling it and all that. But at the same time, don't be afraid to get professional help for it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's healthy. It is self-care. It is serious maintenance. Yeah. Get help because it really empowers you. It's really important to understand what you need. And sometimes we don't know what we need, but a professional does.
Yeah.
I concur with that, Alveda. Most, if you still are working for a company, most insurance now covers mental health counseling. And it's so valuable. I mean, that didn't exist in the 70s. So, but again, that's one of those generational great things that's moved forward. Mental health, especially in a knowledge-based economy, is so extremely important.
Yeah. Without a doubt it is.
Yeah.
Nikki, I know we've got so many questions. I'm seeing them, in
Yes, we do. We have questions. Yes, we do. We have questions coming from several places, from our Q&A section here. And then we also have questions and comments over in our Facebook, because we are on Facebook Live, ladies.
Right.
I forgot to mention that. But yes, we are on Facebook Live. So we do have another question here and some really great comments on Facebook. But our next question is question and a comment from Mr. Daryl Brown. He says, having the dialogue about respect regardless of age and not putting the elders in a box of not learning or wanting to change. Some elders are continuing in education and learning. So I want you all to address that comment, but I also want to go ahead and mention this question. So how do we empower those women that can't work from home or do not have the equipment or knowledge to telework? How can we help them prosper both in finances and education? That's a great question.
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. Lisa, did you want to answer that?
Wow, I was just thinking what a great question it was and how to answer that.
Right.
How do you help somebody that doesn't have tools or resources? Wow. I guess we can lead them in a direction of counselors.
Daryl is a female, by the way. Yeah, she's a female. Yeah, so she's asking a question. Yeah.
Counselors. There
I
are
apologize.
No, you're fine.
scholarships available if they want to, change the direction of their career and do something different. There are scholarships available for older people in the workforce if they're trying to transition into something new. Second Act grants and scholarships, and just talking to people who might be able to help them get their foot in the door if they're trying to do something different. And I'm hoping I did not take this way off the rails in terms of what the person was asking, but that was my share for that part of it.
Anyone else want to share?
I think that we can encourage them to utilize the power in their phone. It's very hard now to get a phone that doesn't have a million capabilities. And because the business world and entrepreneurs see the power in the phone, there are more things like Zoom, more apps and things that are becoming accessible by your little computer that you talk on every day and hold to your ear. And then I also think that if it is the other side, if it's someone now who before did not have the time, finding the downtime now to take care of all the available resources, how-tos, Q&As, videos, and build on what can be self-taught. But I also agree with Lisa. Don't be afraid to ask about that as well, because everything doesn't translate the same for everyone.
I've had several friends who started in a career, bowed out of the career. They had college degrees, bowed out of the career, ended up going through divorces, going through different things that have happened in their lives. And they had to go back to start working after they had been out of the workforce for 30 years. And it's, what do you do at that point? They are making careers for themselves. And I think one of the toughest, even though I haven't been there yet, listening to a few of my girlfriends talk about it, one of the toughest things that they have indicated is they don't feel that they're marketable at this point. And I try to explain to them some of the things that really, what I started doing was saying, start writing down some of the things that are your assets. Start thinking about who you are and what you have to give. Sometimes the smallest of things that don't even seem to mean anything to you would actually be a gold mine for someone else. You could help someone else to really prosper in so many different ways if you just sit down and think about, what are your gifts, what are your talents, and what do you have to share? You have more to share than you even realize that you have. So if you sit down and start writing those things down, I think, and this one girlfriend I'm thinking about right now, she explained to me that probably one of the toughest, but yet one of the most triumphant things that happened to her was dropping out of the workforce and having to find a job after 30 years as hard as it was, it also built her own respect. It empowered her, and she is now teaching a lot of young people how to thrive in a very difficult world.
And I'll just add a little onto that, to what everyone said here. I think the other thing is if you're someone older, either entering the workforce for the first time or going back into it, if you can financially afford to be an intern, you can always volunteer as an intern, and maybe that career that you really wanted to have at one point in your life, or you can volunteer at a nonprofit where you can get skill training, right? Because I don't think there's any nonprofit that would say, no, we don't want to volunteer. We could find, they'll find something for you to do. And that way you start to build a resume as well. So I worked for X nonprofit for 6 months or a year. And, this is what I did. So now you're building a resume that you may not have had before, right? I worked as an intern for X company and, on a stipend, but then again, you're building work skills, right? And you're building interactive skills. Because once you've been out of the workplace for a while, you lose some of that, right? The political part of it. I mean, you got to pull back and go now, you got to pull back on those skills because I don't care what business or profession you're in, you've got to be somewhat political. You have to know how to speak to people. You have to know when to button it when you don't want to. But those are all skills that if you've been out of the workplace for 30 years, you're going to have to, relearn some of the basic stuff. So I think then that translates into your financial future, right? Because now you can go and interview for a job where you can say, I have fresh skills. I've worked here or there. That's what I would recommend.
Good answer. Thank you, Gwen. Nikki? Another question?
Yes, we have another question that's coming through. Yes, coming through my phone. 1 second, please. Technology, I tell you. Okay, the question is code switching a major issue in a dominant white culture?
What switching?
Is code,
what kind of switching?
Do we know what code switching is?
Code switching.
Code switching.
Yeah. So Gwen, let me did you want to?
No, I didn't hear the question. Is code, CODE switching? Code switching? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a new one for me.
So basically, let me give you an example of code switching.
Okay.
So you leave your home in the morning or when you're getting ready to go to work, and you're listening to, you might be listening to D Nice or somebody on the radio, and by the time you turn the corner to get to work, you turn on that jazz right at the store at the corner as you're getting ready to pull into the parking lot. That that's one form of code switching. Or you speak one way at home to the kids, and you speak a totally different way when you get to work when you're in the boardroom.
Right.
That's code switching.
I'll talk about this because I produced a documentary on code switching.
Oh, really?
So, and it is, we have got to, just got to. And I talk to our young people about how to code switch when you're in the workplace. You can say it one way when you're at home. When you come into the workplace, you have got to clean it up because you will instantly be judged if you do not. And it's a matter of, it translates almost into dollars and cents in terms of your promotions, in terms of how you're perceived by the people who can promote you. And it's so important. And I talk to young people because I mentor a journalism class at Granby High School. And I talk to young people all the time. And they call me the queen of interns at WHRO because I'm always have interns. But I talk to them all the time about what you say to, your best friend. You can't have that conversation in the middle of the hallway here at work. You got to clean that up a little bit. You got to know how to switch it. You better know how to switch it up. And they're like, well, Ms. Golly, I don't understand. That's not fair. We're being me. This is who I am. Why do I have to change the way I speak, how I in the workplace? I was like, well, because the people who can promote you, the person who will hire you from an intern to a working person in this company, doesn't want to hear you speak that way. And that's going to be their determining factor into whether they are going to promote you or promote someone else over you. You got to clean it up and you got to learn the difference. But they argue with me about that all the time. I don't want to have to clean up. Why? This is me. This is who I am. I'm living my best life. I want to speak the way I want to speak, and it's not fair. Okay. When you become the CEO of the company, you can hire whoever you want.
You can do what you want to do.
You can come in however you like. Yeah,
Right.
but even then I get it. Yeah.
Well, I think that people have a
Alvina?
hard time with it, or younger people have a hard time with it, because in many ways our culture is bastardized for entertainment and other people can do certain things. And so I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, and I understand the trials and tribulations in the workforce, but I think that is what creates or supports that additional disconnect, because my counterpart, who does not look like me, can utilize rhetoric that she thinks makes me comfortable because I'm a woman of color. And it is embraced when being the woman of color who says something that she thinks is typical because of something she's seen on television. It is looked at differently. You know, a very long time ago, I said one of my biggest fears is that I will be in an airport going somewhere and I'll have a layover in like Iowa, and the only image of a Black woman that they will have seen is one of the basketball wives. And so that sets the
Dear
tone
God.
for what they
Dear
think
God.
is going to come
Dear
out of my
God.
mouth.
That's a nightmare.
Right.
Right.
Far from it. But I think that while I agree that we, and I mean, NPR code switch is wonderful, but I think that maybe the conversations that we need to have to take that, you know, potential personal dagger out of it, it's just professionalism.
Yeah.
There's
it's
just certain things you're
professional.
not going to do. And even if you can't talk about it with being professional, you know, certain things I hope you would not do around your grandmother.
Right. Right. Diane, you were about to say something.
This is so layered, ladies. It is so layered. I honestly, as a person of the created white race on this panel, I mean, it is something I struggle with, and I mentor a lot of younger people, and it's like, okay, Ebonics is Ebonics. And everybody does this, but let's just be real. Right now, it still exists that white patriarchal males pay everybody's salary predominant. I mean, that's a prevailing norm for a lot of business world. So that until that changes, this is just going to be very layered and hard all the time.
Yeah.
Harder for you all than it is for me. I
Alvina.
see it.
But
I think is it because the younger people are, are they the new version of the hippies? My mother was like, granola eating and lava lamps and, the whole 9 yards. And, you wouldn't want somebody in bell bottoms with, God knows, with their weed or whatever they had coming into the workplace. So is this the new version of that? The kids are like, this is who we are. I want to speak this way. I want to, dress this way. So I think to the statement that, it's professionalism. Are you being professional? Is this the way you should dress? Maybe if you were in like the art world, you could, come in, speaking and dressing the way you are. Maybe it's the workplace that you're in that you have to adapt to. Your code switch is based on, the workplace, right? If you're more in a, button down corporate environment, unfortunately, if that's the career you're choosing to go into, that's what you need to do. And you need to adapt to that. So I think it's more of, what the profession is. If you're in modeling, for instance, if that's the career you're going into, you could probably dress and speak a certain way, right? Or if you are on, like you said, Basketball Wives, they're expected to be a bit crass, you know, and over the top. I think it comes down to professionalism. You know, what profession are you in, and how professional do you have to be for that? That's what it seems like to me. And I don't think it's changed any from the 60s to 70s or whatever. Back in the 50s, I think women had those little white gloves on, right? You had to have those hideous white gloves that you had to wear it everywhere. So I think it's just transitional, year to, you know, generation to generation. It's going to be something. I would use an example to them. You want to speak this way and look this way. If someone came in to interview with you, you're now in charge, and they had dirt on their face, and they said, "This is how I like to look. I've got mud on my face." Would you hire them? Because that's who they are. They're living their best life. They like to cover their face in mud. Would you hire them? And I would guarantee you, no one would say yes. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to teach you, which is based on what profession you're going into. That's how you need to present yourself. And now I have a new term, code switching. Thank you.
Good.
I learned something today.
Nikki, do we have time for one more? Just one more? Do we have time?
Yes,
Okay.
just one more.
One more.
One more.
One more. Just one more.
Well, actually, we pretty much answered all of the questions, but we have some great comments here. People are saying, Jarrell is saying, thank you. That was very helpful, your responses. And Dr. Baldwin Bernita says she totally agrees with you, Lisa. I totally agree with your explanation of code switching. And I would like to mention that I have experienced the code switching piece. Hence, that's why you have Nikki Curry. I worked in my last corporate job, I worked in a predominantly white, all male, 99.9% male industry. It was a media marketing and advertising company. And they told me my biological name was never going to fly with that industry. So 20 years later, you have Nikki Curry.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That right there is a whole, that's another topic. That's a whole
Oh,
nother,
my God.
you know,
Wow.
because so many names, I remember being told, can you imagine growing up with the name Alvita that nobody had pretty much? And, you know, you're told, well, you're not going to make it with, you know, with this name or that name or whatever. Try telling me I'm not.
Yeah.
Try telling Nikki she wasn't.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I told you guys it was going to be spirited.
This was good.
Yes, it was. We had such a good time. We learned so much. One, that we all, including Nikki and including Charles, who you didn't hear from, but you see his name there. We are all, you know, Lisa, Sanithia, Gwen, Diane. We are all trailblazers. We are all trailblazers to those who come after us. Yes, we've come a long way, but yes, we've got a long way to go. And it's so important for all of us to have female mentors in the workplace. Thank you so much. And let me say this before we go. I can't even leave before we say this. I just want to say thank you from everybody here tonight that you're looking at. Thank you so much for everybody who's out there. You're social distancing. You are at home. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Thank you for the others who can't do that. Thank you for putting your lives on the line. All of us right now, you're putting yourselves in harm's way just to keep us safe. The doctors, the nurses, the caregivers, the food handlers, the grocery store employees, the UPS people, the mail carriers, all essential personnel. We just want to say thank you. You know, we're praying for those families who have lost loved ones. We're praying for people who are going through so much right now because of COVID-19. Yes, it's going to change things. We just pray that it's going to change things for the better. And I'm sorry that we have to lose a lot to gain a lot. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel tonight. We appreciate you. God bless you and have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you.